Ladies and gentlemen, it's Wizard Day. Today we're going to talk about all the Wizard cards. We're going to give them all a star ranking, and that's kind of what we're doing in this series. We're looking at every card in Everfest, and we're all giving them gold stars. Maybe they get 1 gold star, which would be really bad for them. Maybe they would get 5 gold stars, which would be the pinnacle of achievement. And today, we're doing Wizard stuff. It's Wizard time, my favorite class. I think I've decided. I think I've finally decided Wizard's my favorite class. But is it? I can't. Oh, it's just so hard to pick, man. They're all so fun, but it's definitely one of the top 3. I don't know. I may just as well cut this part out. Who knows? It is just a fun class to play. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and I want to talk about these cards, starting with Icelander. Icelander is a really cool young elemental wizard hero. She has 18 health, so she's more beefy than Kano. She has 4 intellect, and she has Essence of Ice, which means you can play ice cards. That is a subtype of card found in Tales of Aria. She also says if it's not your turn, you can play non-attack action cards with blue color strips from your arsenal as though they were an instant. And she also says whenever you play an ice card during your opponent's turn, you create a frostbite token for them. Now, I want to point this out. There are not as many usable ice cards. Notably, we do have some very powerful cards that can be played at instant speed or are already instants, like Blizzard, for example, is a fantastic card. And then, of course, there's this one called like Channel Lake Frigid. I don't know if you've ever heard of that card. Those are very powerful options in Icelander, and she has access to them as, of course, she has the Essence of Ice keyword. And also, if you play those, your opponent gets a frostbite because you're playing them on your opponent's turn. Now, of course, you do have to play Channel Lake Frigid from your arsenal on your opponent's turn at instant speed. It can't come from your hand, but that's kind of what is interesting about Icelander. She's doing wizardy things, playing things at instant speed on your opponent's turn, but she's doing them in her specific way, and she has a couple of interesting little caveats and archetypes that she can go down. Notably, she can play a little bit more controlling than we've seen up until this point, because she can play disruptive things like ice cards that disrupt your opponent, but she can also still just do wizardy things. She still has access to Voltic Bolts and, Aether Flares. She can still, stir fork you to death, but she has a few more tools in her tool belt for which to attack your opponent, and she's hamstrung in a different way. Kano had to play off the top of his deck to do certain things, right? Icelander has to play from Arsenal. There's less combo potential because you can't do this multiple times because there's only one Arsenal card, but she has the ability to do it for essentially just the cost of the card, and you don't have to pay 3 resources just to get the card off the top of your deck and then pay for the card like you do in Kano. So there's definitely some balances that are placed on Icelander compared to what Kano can do. I don't think it's necessarily that she's distinctly worse than Kano or distinctly better than Kano. I just think she is her own hero, and that's what I love about her. I think she's a solid 3-star. She can only be played in Blitz, and that's okay because she can do some stuff in Blitz, and I do think that she is definitely more disruptive to your opponent's sort of turn cycles, and that's going to be really interesting to see how this shapes up once we get to some heavy Blitz play. See if people pick up Icelander and start jamming out some games with her. I give her a nice solid 3-star. I think she'll be very, very fun to play, and I don't know if she'll be fun to play against, but she definitely looks, and from what I've experienced myself, she is definitely pretty fun to play. Kraken's Aether Vein is a cool weapon. It's a weapon that I've thought about more and more as time has gone on, and when I first saw it, I was like, it's not so good. It's like, what do you really care? It just deals 1 damage. But the more I've thought about it, the more interested in this weapon I've got. And so it says, Wizard Weapon. It's a 2-handed staff. It's majestic in this set, and it says once per turn instant, pay 3 resources, so pitch a blue. You can do this on your turn, you can do this on your opponent's turn because it's an instant, but you can only do it once per turn. Deal 1 arcane damage to target opposing hero, and then draw a card for each arcane damage dealt this way. Now, the first thing I did when I looked this up is I found if we could amplify the damage in any way, shape, or form, because if you can, this card is busted. As of right now, you can't, I believe. amplify this in any way, tell me if I'm wrong in a comment below. And in fact, if you disagree with my ranking on this card, tell me that in a comment below as well, because I love hearing your comments. Listen to a lot of the ones on the last couple of videos. I really enjoy like talking with you guys about these cards. I think it's fun to just jump in the comments section. So feel free to join in on the comments down below. This card to me is perfect for control wizard. And that's something that's literally never been played. Well, that's not true. When Wizard first was released, there was like this sort of Genesis OTK deck that was out there. Not Genesis like the card, it was like the beginnings of an OTK list, where you just like blocked out and then pitch stacked and then like played a bunch of potions and then exploded your opponent, right? And then that's sort of evolved into what General Kano is now. But now we have some capabilities with Icelander and with this weapon perhaps, and some other cards we'll talk about, for a true control list. Just imagine, you keep one card in hand after blocking your opponent's attacks out as best you can. That card's a blue when they are out of resources or down to one card that they clearly want to arsenal. You can Kraken's Aether Vein, and if they choose not to take it, or if they choose to take it and not block it, I should say, then you just draw a card and then go to your turn and you have a card still. You dealt 1 point of damage, and you can either arsenal that card if it's a card you want to play on their turn, or you can pitch it and say, do you want to stop this one arcane? Because oftentimes on your turn, stopping this one arcane means they're playing a 3-card hand next turn. And at that point, you've taken a card from their hand. Yes, it is on the bottom of their deck, but you've taken a card from their hand, and they can't come at you as strongly. So basically, you just play this control game, perhaps, with this card, and then line up like a big OTK. I could see this being a thing, and so for that reason, I give this weapon a 2-star, which hurts me deep down, because as of right now, it's just not very good. But maybe in the future, it gets better with a few more tools, and it becomes like a 3-star weapon. But as of right now, it's like a 2-star. Ugh. But this card, maybe it helps. I don't know. Sigil of Parapets also sort of plays into the controlling wizard style. It is a 1-cost majestic. It only blocks for 2, and it's a defense reaction that blocks for 2. Ouch. But it says while it is defending, whenever you play a wizard card, it gains +2. So once you've paid for this and established it onto the chain, then you can play some like wizardy things at instant speed, and in doing so, this gets stronger. So in a meta that is all about one big attack, or maybe like 2 kind of medium-sized attacks, this has a lot of utility. And by the way, we're kind of in that meta where we have like 1 or 2 big attacks. And, like from Bravo, for example, star of the show, he just throws something big at you, and then you Sigil of Parapets, and then you play a few things out yourself as sort of a counterattack, and as you're doing so, Sigil of Parapets is getting stronger. Plus, if you pitch a blue, you're already floating 2 resources. Like, you play Sigil, you pitch a blue, you float 2 resources. What do you do with those resources? I don't know. Play some wizard stuff. Maybe make some wizard stuff happen, and then as you're doing so, your block is getting progressively better. So it seems pretty decent. I'm giving this a 3-star right now, and I do think that this doesn't have a ton of utility against certain matchups that want to go super wide. That being said, I like this card, and I like its inclusion into perhaps a budding control wizard deck. This card, now we get to talk about my favorite card for wizard, Aether Wildfire. It's a 2-cost wizard action that blocks for 3. It's a majestic. It says deal 4 arcane damage to target opposing hero. That's like not good on your turn, but if you play this on your opponent's turn, then until the end of the turn, action card effects that deal arcane damage will instead deal that much damage that they normally deal, plus X, where X is whatever this dealt. So in other words, you play this down, your opponent blocks for 2 of the 4 on their turn, right? They're like playing stuff there, and you're like, oh, well, but just wait. Aether Wildfire coming in for 4. What do you want to do? And they're like, yeah, I'll block 2. At that point, everything that you could play on their turn that deals arcane damage is now getting buffed by 2. It is Aether Flare just to the nth degree. It's Aether Flare on steroids. It is insane. This card is really, really good. Now, it is expensive as well. And so if you're like lining this up and you're like playing it off the top of your deck, you do have to account for the fact that if you're Kano, then you are pitching 3 just to banish this and then pitching 2 just to play this. So it is a very expensive card. And you know, there's this really good deck like called Bravo and Guardian in general that now have the ability to play the Hammer and Arcane Lantern. The fact that they can do that means that they can probably block stuff like this, and a 2 for 4 on their turn that they might be able to block out that may not do stuff may be a little frustrating. But honestly, if they're running like Arcane Barrier 4, then they probably already have the advantage in the matchup anyway to a certain degree, and you just kind of have to tiptoe around their threats in a different way. So I think this is like an almost always play card that you only sideboard out in very weird specific setups. This card is super good. It is a 5-star card in my opinion. I don't think you can argue with me. I don't know, maybe you can. Just tell me why you think it would be less, maybe like a 4-star card or less. I'd love to get your insight. If you've played around with this a ton and you're like, yeah, it's actually not that great, let me know in the comment below. But for me, it's a uber nuts card. Scour is an interesting one because it costs X, so you can pitch into it as much as you want. And it says, destroy X target aura tokens and or auras with cost 0 controlled by target hero. Then deal arcane damage to that hero equal to the number of auras you destroy. So it's aura destruction, and that's something that Wizard is gaining in this set. Another tool in their toolkit for sideboarding into tough matchups, like Prism, for example. Prism is a tough matchup. Now, not because of auras. Well, possibly because of auras, but when I've played against Prism as Kano, the toughness of that matchup is that they can just throw giant heralds for like 6 and 7 at you with go again multiple times a turn. It is very hard to deal with those. You don't have any way to pop those and stop that from happening. And so for me, that's the rub in the matchup between Prism and Kano, or Prism and Wizard, I guess, because you can now do this with Icelander as well. So it's really not it's not as crazy against Scour. I mean, it's not as crazy against Prism if they're playing the Heralds. But if they're, of course, playing all the Prism Aura stuff, where, especially with these 0-cost auras that they just got printed in this set, it does have some more utility. It destroys Spectral Shields as well, but where things get really interesting is against Runeblade. It destroys Soul Shackles, Rune Chants, and I guess technically you could destroy like embodiment tokens as well, which is kind of spicy. But it also is just another piece of control that you could put into like a control wizard, like an Icelander. You can play this at instant speed because it comes from the arsenal and it's blue strip. You can pay into it as much or as little as you want. You can wait to do this late. You can wait to do it, or you just do it up early so they can't use it. It does have use case scenarios across the board to a certain degree, and for that reason, I do kind of like it. So I'm giving this a 3-star, but you could definitely, and I could see you make this statement in the comments down below, could be a 2-star, but for me this is a great sideboard 3. Emeritus Scolding is interesting, and I'll tell you why. Because it compares nicely to like a Voltic Bolt. Voltic Bolt is also a 2-cost that deals arcane damage. Emeritus Scolding here, 2-cost cycle that deals 4, 3, or 2, depending on what color you're playing. The red here deals 4, but if you play it on your opponent's turn, the red deals 6, which is very beefy. Now, if you're playing the red on your own turn, it deals 4, so it's 1 less than Voltic Bolt, which dealt 5 on red, right? If you play Voltic Bolt from the top of your deck, you're paying a total of 5 resources to deal 5 damage. Whereas if you're playing Scolding off the top of your deck, as Kano, you're paying 5 resources to deal 6 damage, which is very interesting. You have this card that is essentially the same as Voltic Bolt, a little worse on your turn, a little better on your opponent's turn. The hang up and the rub is that, yes, if you hit like Voltic Bolt late game on your opponent's turn, you probably win the game. And it's the same thing with Emeritus Scolding, but it's expensive to do on your opponent's turn. In general, it's just expensive to play on your opponent's turn. Doesn't matter if you're going to like win the game or not. It is expensive. You have to account for that. And so because it can be expensive, and because you may get stuck in scenarios where you just can't pay for it, you have to be aware of that. And it's the same argument for Voltic Bolt. It's just that this is encouraging you by having a 2+ buff on your opponent's turn. It's encouraging you to play it on your opponent's turn. So we have to look at it like the card is better than Voltic Bolt on our opponent's turn and worse on ours. So if we play it on our opponent's turn, we have to realize that it's going to be more expensive. All this to say, I give this a 3-star solid ranking. It's weird because like this could be a 4-star card, and it may just be included in a lot of decks, and I'm probably going to run like the blues and the reds and just jam those out there, because it does end up being like 4 arcane on my turn and 6 on my opponent's. It's just that the fact that it's like sometimes you top deck this with Kano and you're like, ugh, that sucks. Moving on to a card that looks weirdly like me. I just need a crown. Look, if you're going to go to New Jersey, if you're going to go to Pro Tour #1, I'm going to go to Pro Tour #1. I'm just going to go see what's going on. I think it's going to be fantastic. If you are going and you make a crown like this, I will straight up put it on and take a picture with you. It'll be a fantastic time. Maybe I should just sit down and make like a little hat or a little crown with some trees sticking up and like some fake waters on like a waterfall going off to the side. Let's talk about the card as I get distracted by the fact that I should get my ear pierced for this. I could totally cosplay this, man. It'd be sick. This costs 0, and the red here says target hero reveals 3 cards from their hand. This is if you play it on your turn, but if you play it on your opponent's turn, then they reveal all the cards in their hand. The cool thing about this card is that the cycle doesn't matter if you play it on your opponent's turn, because it'll always reveal all cards. So you can play the blue and they still have to show all cards from their hand. The change is if you play it on your turn, and that's what's really interesting about this card. Now, once they've shown what cards are in their hand, you get to pick one card, put it on the bottom of their deck, and then they redraw to fill up their hand back to what they put down. So they are basically cycling a card. Think of it like a bad sink below for them, or Phantasmaclasm's effect. If you don't know Phantasmaclasm, it was an illusionist attack that did this exact effect. You looked at their hand, you picked one card, you sunk it, and then they redrew to fix that, basically, to just draw that card back up. So basically this allows you as a control wizard or as an Icelander on blue to play this for free and to disrupt their hand, sink something that's really good that they could come at you with, and then make them draw into something that's slightly worse. So again, it allows you to disrupt them. It allows you to protect yourself in just a little bit of a different way. I like this. Now, is this playable in Kano? You can play it, but you probably won't, and you probably shouldn't. So for that reason, I think overall this is a 2-star card. But if you're playing this in Icelander or a control style wizard, this is like a solid 3-star card. Like, I will include the blues in Icelander when I build a new Icelander deck. The blues will be in this deck. Finally, and I think this is, no, there's two more. Pyroglyphic Protection is a 2-cost wizard action aura that blocks for 2, which is bad. And then it says if your hero would be dealt arcane damage, prevent 3 arcane damage that source would deal. And then at the beginning of your action phase, destroy this. So it doesn't even stick around that long. It just sticks around through your opponent's turn. This is like, I guess, good in the mirror. And then I haven't yet thought of a use case for this outside of the mirror, because like, yes, you may think this is great against Runeblade, who's going to deal you all that rune chant damage, but really it's not, because rune chants are separate sources of 1 arcane damage, and this prevents 1 source of 3 or less. So this soaks 1 rune chant. Where this does, I guess, get benefit outside of the mirror in Wizard versus Wizard is in like, Runeblade and they attack with Rosetta Thorn or Vexing Malice, where it's like 1 source of 2 arcane damage. In that respect, yes, this is good. It blocks there. But for me, it's just good in the mirror, and you're probably just going to race your opponent in the mirror, so you're never really playing this. Again, Control Wizard, but even this in Control Wizard just doesn't feel very good. So for me, I don't like this card. I think it's a 1-star card, which is sad because that art is beautiful. But yeah, I think it is worthy of the 1-star ranking, which is really, really sad. Not sure it's ever going to come out of the binder once I put it in there. Last card, Timekeeper's Whim, cost 3, beautiful art, probably some of my favorite art in the set. Blocks for 3. It says deal 5 arcane damage to target hero. If it is played during an opponent's turn, put it on the bottom of your deck. So the blue here attacks for 3 or pushes 3 arcane damage, and then could go to the bottom of your deck on your opponent's turn as well. So what's interesting about this card is that it plays into like this control fatigue strategy. It's a way to deal damage and also not lose cards out of the deck, because if your job is to just block out and just protect your life and then deal some arcane damage back at just little chunks at times, then this card allows for you to not deck out in the process of blocking out. Like, you keep this in your hand, or you keep it circulating by pitching it, and then towards the late game you're able to kind of use this multiple times if you're, you know, arsenaling the blue as Icelander, or just pitching to the top of your deck and then playing this. The sad part is that it costs 3. It's so expensive. The red, of course, attacking for 5 is great, but Voltic Bolt does the same thing for 1 less. Do you really care about the going to the bottom of your deck thing in just like standard wizard? And probably not. The answer is probably not. In fact, it might even just mess up your pitch stacking. So for me, this card's like a 2-star card, namely just because you probably think about it in like a controlling fatigue style wizard that doesn't really exist yet, but maybe you could make that deck. Maybe you can make that exist. And that's part of the reason why I want to go to Volcor, man. Volcor is like wizard country. It's like wizard time. It's wizard town, and also Kasai town. It's like the coolest region in Wraith, in my opinion. It's like my favorite region by far, and I really hope we go there in June. I can't wait for more wizard cards. I think they got tools in this set that are interesting. Allows them to sideboard now, which I don't think has ever been the case. They're definitely leaning more towards the controlling wizard. In a way, this kind of feels like they introduced a package, a control wizard package, like they did with Brute. They introduced a die rolling package. It's just that the controlling package probably has more utility than the die rolling package. And so that's my thoughts on Wizard. If you enjoyed this video, if you got some value out of it, feel free to make the number go to the number, and we might get to the 8K mark. That would be fun. Leave a comment down below if you want to tell me what you think about these cards and Wizard in general, and feel free to watch one of these other videos that I've made for this exact series, and one of these other class videos. As always, everybody, thanks for watching.